talk we had earlier this morning was to kind of lay the groundwork for this. The whole foundation of society is being restructured along mystical lines. But I believe that all this is being done as a prelude to something much more significant, much more gigantic in nature. Contemplative prayer is the same as New Age type meditation. This is from a book called The Inward Journey. It says to help the mind become quiet, we can follow our breathing, or we can repeat silently a chosen prayer phrase or word. Now this is what the appeal of contemplative prayer is that if you're just a normal Christian in your five senses, you're not really going to get God's full attention or his full presence. So when you go into the silence, then you'll be better able to hear God guiding and directing you. And that's the big pull of this movement is, you're going to get more of God, you're going to get the full measure of God, and your Christian life is going to be greatly invigorated. This was first practiced by the Desert Fathers, a group of monks in the deserts of North Africa and in the Middle East. And this is from a book called Finding God by Father Ken Caish. And he said it was a time of great experimentation with spiritual methods. Now, did you all get that? Experimentation with spiritual methods. They were experimenting. They didn't get this from the scriptures. This wasn't passed down from the apostles. They experimented, and it says many different kinds of disciplines were tried, some of which are too harsh or extreme for people today. Now, I'd like to know what those were. Many different methods of prayer were created and explored by them. Now, did you get that? Created. This is the basis of why I think I can legitimately crusade against contemplative prayer, because it's not something in the Bible that people may or may not have a grasp of. It's something that was created by people outside a biblical context. And many of the promoters of contemplative prayer will say, this was first done by the Desert Fathers. This is Thomas Merton. He would be considered probably the main icon of the contemplative prayer movement. He said that Christianity could not fulfill its mission to save the world without contemplative prayer. But the thing is, did he come out with something that could save people's souls? Did he come out with a worldview that was conducive to the gospel? Well, let's look. Okay, he said, "It is a glorious destiny to be a member of the human race. Now I realize what we all are." Well, what are we? Okay. If only people, could see themselves as they really are, I suppose the big problem would be that we would fall down and worship each other. Well, why? Why would we want to worship each other? Because at the center of our being is a point of nothingness, which is untouched by sin and by illusions. That nothingness means, altered states of consciousness, in other words, the thoughtless state. A point of pure truth. This little point is the pure glory of God in us. It is in everybody. See, what he has just described, what Thomas Merton has just described, is what the New Age calls the higher self. That within every human being, or everything that exists for that matter, there is this essence which is the pure glory of God. And he says it's in everybody. And when he says everybody, he means everybody. This is a book called Merton and Sufism. The Sufis are the mystics of the Muslim religion. And that man there, you see, he looks like Obi-Wan Kenobi or somebody. That is Sheikh Ahmad el-Alawi. And Sheikh Ahmad was a great Sufi mystic. Well, Thomas Merton had contact with him, and this is what he said about Sheikh Ahmad. He says, he was one of the greatest religious figures of this century. Well, then he says, and this is the point I'm getting at, he says, he was so perfectly right in his spirituality, certainly a great saint and a man full of the Holy Spirit. With Sheikh Ahmad, I speak the same language. So contemplative prayer aligned Thomas Merton with Sufism to the degree that Thomas Merton said that he was deeply impregnated with Sufism. Next person is Henry Nouwen. Henry Nouwen was a Catholic priest, and many of his books have become very influential in the evangelical world. This one, The Way of the Heart, was being used as a study guide at a Young Life meeting. And this is contemplative prayer here. The quiet repetition of a single word can help us descend with the mind into the heart. In other words, you're repeating this word, and the mind kind of shuts down. You kind of go into your center. He says this simple way of prayer opens us to God's active presence. This book is what you might call a primer on contemplative prayer, the way of the heart, connecting with God through prayer, wisdom, and silence. So again, did contemplative prayer take Henry Nouwen in the realm of true Christianity? Did he embrace the preaching of the cross to a high degree? Well, no. He said in his book, Sabbatical Journey, this is his diary, he said, "Today I personally believe that while Jesus came to open the door to God's house, all human beings can walk through that door whether they know about Jesus or not. Today I see it as my call to help every person claim his or her own way to God." So in other words, there was no wrong way to God. Okay, this is Richard Foster. Foster says, "We should all without shame enroll in the school of contemplative prayer." When he says all, he means all. Okay, this is Brennan Manning, a major promoter of contemplative prayer. Grabbing a hold of God is the goal of contemplative prayer. That is why the first step in faith is to stop thinking about God at the time of prayer. See, I knew you'd laugh. Everybody does. Everybody that goes into these trances finds out that they're one with everything. It's called panentheism. Okay, a good example of that is Sue Monk Kidd. Now, Sue Monk Kidd, this is a very important part of the talk. This is probably one of the most important elements here. Sue Monk Kidd was a Southern Baptist Sunday school teacher in a small town in South Carolina. Well, now, folks, you don't get any more conservative than that. She started doing contemplative prayer. Somebody handed her a book by Thomas Merton in her Sunday school class, and she started doing it. So this is her latest book called First Light. She says, "God became the steam of my soup, the uprooted tree, the graffiti on the building, the rust on the fence." Now, what would make a person believe that God is the rust on the fence? Okay, we'll see. She became a New Ager. This is her third book, The Dance of the Dissident Daughter, and in it she talks about how she made the transition into goddess consciousness. This explains why God is the steam in her soup and the rust on the fence and the uprooted tree. This is Wicca. She became a Wiccan. We also need goddess consciousness to reveal Earth's holiness. Matter becomes inspirited. Goddess offers us the holiness of everything. My ultimate authority is the divine voice in my own soul, period. So she believes God is the rust on the fence because of her divine voice in her own soul. Okay, this is a book called Reimagining Christianity by Alan Jones. Okay, that's the cross. That's a dashboard right there. That's a Buddha. Yeah, that's a Buddha there. So we have the cross and we have the Buddha. There's a reason for that picture, because Alan Jones says the life of contemplative prayer, loved and in communion with all things, there we have that you're connected to everything that exists. The soul is born in and out of the secret silence of God. This silence at the heart of mysticism is not only the meeting point of the great traditions, that's the world's religions, but also where all hearts might meet. So in other words, contemplative prayer, or this mysticism or meditation, or as he calls it, the secret silence of God, is not just where all the great world religions can meet, but where everybody can meet, whether you're an atheist or no matter what you are. All of humanity can be united at the mystical level, truly a one-world religion. Okay, on the back cover, Brian McLaren says, okay, are you ready for this? Are you ready?
What news, Apostle John? What is the news from the great beyond? What